Just before we get into this video, guys, if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, the links are here. And if you also want to support me on Patreon as well and help out my channel, that would be absolutely awesome as well. But let's get on with the video. Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to a brand new video. So a lot of you guys really want me to talk about the Doctor Who spin-off, Sarah Jane Adventures and Torchwood. I am never doing class, don't even bother asking because it's just a straight no. Since Sarah Jane Adventures has recently been put onto BBC iPlayer, I've been watching it again and I thought I would give you guys my 5 favourite Sarah Jane stories. Now this isn't necessarily like in order or anything, these are just 5 adventures that I would recommend to you guys. So I know there's a few people out there that maybe didn't watch them when they first came out because you just think, well, it's on CBBC so it's just really a kids show. But I've got to admit, even though it is a lot more light-hearted than Doctor Who, it's still a lot of fun, and to be honest, some of the Sarah Jane Adventures episodes are actually better than some of the current new series episodes. Anyway, let's get into my favourite 5 stories. So the first one that I want to talk about is an episode called The Gift. Now this story sees Sarah Jane sort of make friends with the Blathereen. They are Raxacoricofallapatorians, but they're not green like the Slitheen, they're brown. And obviously because Sarah Jane has met the Raxacoricofallapatorians before, she doesn't really trust them. However, they help her out and then they come round for dinner. But then they give her a gift in the form of a plant known as rackweed. And the reason they give her this rackweed is because the Blathereen tell her that this will cure world hunger. It can grow in any sort of temperature or any sort of condition. So even in the hottest conditions in Africa or the coldest conditions in the Antarctic, this stuff will grow. However, they are still Raxacoricofallapatorians and not all is going to be as it seems, is it? Turns out these rackweeds are full of a virus that will just wipe out the entire human race, but not for the reasons you might think. Turns out these Blathereen, they're addicted to it. It's like a drug for them. This is a really fun episode. I like seeing aliens who act all good and sweet and innocent, but we just know that they're bad guys. And also the fact that this is a plant-based story, it does remind me of the Crinoid story, The Seeds of Doom, back in the 70s, which Sarah Jane of course was a part of. And I guess as well, this is probably the closest we're going to get to the Crinoids back in the Doctor Who universe. Possibly, I don't know. But yeah, this is a fun one. I really enjoy this one. Next up, The Mark of the Berserker. So the basic premise of this story, well, Rani discovers this necklace, and what she finds out with this necklace is when you put it on, if you tell somebody to do something, they'll go and do it. However, it has consequences. It starts putting its mark on you, and then you get sort of weird and veiny, and then you're not really yourself anymore. Sarah Jane isn't really a part of this one, but I don't mind, and it's for a very good reason. Throughout the entirety of the Sarah Jane Adventures, we are well aware that Clyde doesn't really see his dad, and he properly resents him and all. However, in this story, his dad comes back. So Clyde has this conflict within him, just like, well, I hate you for leaving us, but you're still my dad at the end of the day. And things seem to be going all well and good. Clyde tells his dad that, well, I basically saved the world. And then he takes him up to the attic where Rani has left this necklace, and his dad nicks it and then puts it on and starts becoming really angry. Like, well, it is called Mark of the Berserker, so that's why. I just really enjoy this story. It's such a personal tale for Clyde and it's really great character development for him. There's moments in this as well that are really sad, like his dad tells him to forget about his friends and his own mum, and he does. Okay, it's only temporary, but it's still quite sad. I just like this one for the character growth. It's not really the most entertaining and action-packed of all the Sarah Jane Adventures, but it hits you in the feels. Okay, so next one I want to go to is The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. Now this is a really cool one as well. Sarah Jane is acting really bizarre. She's disappearing all the time. She's not really telling people where she's going. She's hiding secrets, so Luke, Ronnie and Clyde are getting pretty suspicious. However, it turns out she's just been going on a date with some guy. And then he proposes to Sarah Jane. She accepts, and then Sarah Jane's ring starts to glow. However, no one really notices this. They get to the wedding, everything seems to be fine. All is not as it seems, as just as Sarah's about to say I do, the Doctor runs in. Then after that, the Doctor, Ronnie, Clyde and Luke, along with K9, they are trapped in 1 second of time. Sarah Jane is also stuck in the second of time as well, but a different one with her fiance. Turns out this is all a big plan by the Trickster. The dude that she's marrying is dead and the Trickster brought him back to life because he was the perfect match for Sarah Jane. Thing is though, if Sarah Jane accepts to marry this guy, Peter, I think his name is. I think it's Peter. Anyway, if she accepts to marry Peter, then she will go on and live happily ever after. Peter will come back to life, but she will no longer be who she was before. She will not stop any alien threats. Therefore, any other alien race that wants to invade the Earth, they pretty much can. And likewise for the Trickster, he's got an open playing field. If she declines, well, they're stuck there forever. Also, the Doctor doesn't have his TARDIS, so that's a bit of a bother. The Trickster is easily the best Sarah Jane villain, I've got to admit. All the episodes with the Trickster, again, it hits you in the feels. You really feel for Sarah Jane in these episodes. Sarah Jane, as much as she loved her time with the Doctor and what she does now, she's craving a normal life, and she has that opportunity, but still it's not quite right. Something from space gets in the way. It's a really nice guest spot from David Tennant. This was actually the last thing that he filmed before he left as the Doctor. So I mean, he'd already done his regeneration and everything like that. I think whilst he was filming this, Matt Smith had already begun filming, or was just about to. So it's really weird how this was actually his last time as the Doctor. I mean, until Day of the Doctor. So yeah, it's a fun story, but it does have some heart behind it too. Next we go to an episode that is pure fucking fan wank, and I love it. The Enemy of the Bane. Now the Bane, if you aren't aware, are a villain in the Sarah Jane Adventures who appeared way back in the very first episode. They were led by someone called Mrs. Wormwood, who's a really, you just want to punch her in the face. Anyway, she wants Sarah Jane's help. Because of the events in the last time that we saw Mrs. Wormwood, she basically failed, and now the Bane want revenge and want to eat her, because that's sort of what the Bane do. Of course they do. Sarah Jane, of course, reluctantly agrees, and obviously she's going to get double-crossed. Mrs. Wormwood isn't actually just trying to look for refuge away from the Bane. She's actually looking to resurrect someone known as Horath, who is a robotic or cybernetic creature that used to rule over the galaxy. However, two parts of him were separated on each side of the universe, and I bet you can guess where one half of him is. Earth. It's Earth. So, Mrs. Wormwood ends up double-crossing Sarah Jane and gets assistance from Karg, a Sontaran who survived the Sontaran stratagem / the Poison Sky back in Series 4 of Doctor Who. So, not only do you get this really interesting concept of this villain that is split in two, you get the return of Mrs. Wormwood, you get a Sontaran who we have already seen in the Sarah Jane Adventures before at the beginning of that same series, but the creme de la menthe of this story, Nicholas Courtney, is back as the Brigadier. Unfortunately, this would end up being Nicholas Courtney's last acting role on television. A few years later, he sadly passed away within weeks of Elizabeth Sladen. And even though he has clearly aged from the 70s, which, I mean, he would, he's still very much the lovable Brigadier that we remember from the unit days. I just think it's such a shame that in the wedding episode that I just mentioned, Nicholas Courtney was also scheduled to appear. So we would have seen him with a new series Doctor. It wasn't meant to be, but at least we get this story with him. And then the final one that I want to talk about is known as Death of the Doctor, and yeah, it's got the Doctor in it. Now this one is interesting for a few reasons. First of all, it's not David Tennant, because like I say, he'd already gone at this stage. It's Matt Smith's Doctor, and yet it's really interesting to hear Russell T Davies write for the 11th Doctor. It's not something that you'd expect, but also David Bradley is in this episode. Well, his voice is. And it also sees the return of Joe Grant. Weirdly, it also has Finn Jones in it, who is Iron Fist now on Netflix. That's bizarre. So the basic premise of this is Unit arrive at Sarah Jane's house, inform her that the Doctor is dead. They invite her to his funeral, but Sarah Jane just isn't having any of it. The Shan Sheath, these vulture-like aliens, are there hosting the funeral, and it seems like they're not all they're cracked up to be. They've pinched the Doctor's TARDIS, however they don't have the key, so what they need is people's memories of the Doctor to reform a new key so they can get in and prevent death around the universe. Now you may think that that's a noble cause, but if you take death off the table, there are going to be some consequences. Unless you're Stephen Moffat when you're writing Hellbent. And obviously the Doctor isn't dead, he's just stranded on another planet and he's trying to make his way back. This is a really good episode. It's really enjoyable because you get to see not only Sarah Jane's point of view of losing the Doctor, or losing the Doctor, but you see Joe Grant's realisation as well that, oh, hang on, the Doctor came back for you, but he left me. And I think the interactions with Joe and the Doctor are some really, really sweet scenes. I think some of the sweetest scenes that the Doctor and Joe ever had. It's a very fan-wanky episode again, but it's a lot of fun, and like I say, seeing Matt Smith opposite Sarah Jane, brilliant. Oh yeah, and the actual pacing of the plot to this one is actually really, really good. Sometimes the Sarah Jane Adventures feels quite condensed and rushed. I don't really get that with this one. It feels like it takes its time and it builds naturally. So yeah, they are some of my favourite Sarah Jane Adventures episodes. Let me know what you guys think. What are your favourite Sarah Jane episodes? And if you haven't seen the Sarah Jane Adventures, well, go and check it out, because like I say, it's on BBC iPlayer. And no, this video isn't sponsored, but I really fucking wish it was. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it. Subscribe for more, because I'm going to be doing Torchwood next. Also follow me on social media, links are in the description, and also if you want to support me on Patreon, then feel free as well, and if you do any of those things, I would love you forever. But until next time guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. I don't know why either.